Mama, is God real?
Is marriage for life?
Do we have to be baptized?
Is drinking really wrong?
Well, that's your interpretation.
Where do I come from?
Do we really have to have authority for what we do?
Where is God when I need Him?
Rise up, O men of God. His kingdom tarries long. Bring near the day of brotherhood and in the night of wrong.
Welcome again to the Shield of Faith, a program where we take your Bible questions and give you Bible answers. My name is Wes Garland, and I am the preacher for the Northwest Church of Christ in Clay County, Tennessee. And we also have with us Scott Gann.
Hey, Wes.
He is the preacher for the Philippi Church of Christ in Tompkinsville, Kentucky. And we also have with us Eric Pitcock.
Hey, Wes.
He is the preacher for the Gamaliel Church of Christ in Gamaliel, Kentucky. And friends, as you have noticed, springtime is just around the corner. And we have a problem because as spring comes around, hotter weather comes around, and lesser clothes are being worn. Friends, whenever we think about the subject of immodesty, it is something that is going rampant all over this nation.
Absolutely.
You can be driving around on the roads and you see a half-naked female on the billboards. You also rent movies or maybe even watch some movies. And lo and behold, before you know it, there's going to be some type of immodesty right there on the screen. But even watching TV, you cannot almost watch any show at all without having some type of immodesty. Right. And what we are talking about, whenever we are talking about modesty, we are talking about that in which God approves of in dealing with clothing. And whenever we are then adding the I am in front of it, immodesty, that is then the going against what God has approved for people then to wear. Now, guys, as we're about to start talking about this immodesty, what then is God's law concerning this?
Well, you know, Wes, the Bible teaches us that we're to be modest people. We're to be modest. The women is instructed to be modest in 1 Timothy 2 and verse number 9. We know that the women are to be modest. We know the Bible teaches us to have shamefacedness, and it teaches us to be a pure people. And you know, with all of these different principles in mind, you know, we're to be modest. We're to be pure and shamefaced. And so, you know, one of the places that I would go to is, you know, people are always trying to skirt around what they need to do as far as their modesty. They're trying to always get around, you know, what they need to do and what they need to wear, and they're always trying to come up with some type of excuse to satisfy their conscience and how they act and how, you know, they wear. You know, you've got somebody and their teenage daughter. They want to wear some short shorts, and they want to wear you know, tank tops, and they want to wear, you know, tight clothing and things that are revealing. They want to wear those things, and then, you know, in an effort to justify themselves, they bring up all types of questions, and they think, well, you know, that was of the past, or you know, you're living in the past. Right. Well, God has a standard.
Absolutely. Exactly.
God has a standard. God has instructed us. He teaches us, you know, what would be proper and what would be improper. First thing I would point out would be the fact that you know, some people say, have a misconception of exactly what nakedness is.
Right. See, a whole lot of people think that nakedness is being totally nude, and it's not.
That's not at all the case.
That's not the biblical definition of,
exactly.
No,
of
and
nakedness.
Scott, and Scott, you can be naked, according to the Bible. You can be naked and still have clothes on.
Absolutely.
You can be fully clothed and still be considered naked.
I think that's a good point, Wes, that we need to make sure that people understand.
That's right.
You can be fully clothed and still be immodest.
That's right.
When somebody has got clothes on that's so tight and so revealing, you could leaves nothing to the imagination, then that is immodest also. You can be fully dressed.
That's right.
With low-cut tops.
That's right.
Too tight of any clothing, shirts, blue jeans, and we see that all over the place.
Well, I was actually talking to a man before, and I was talking to him about, you know, there was a female that was actually fully clothed and everything, but wearing very tight things, and you know what he told me? He said, you know, whenever you really think about it, tight clothes can make the imagination even worse.
It can. It can.
Because, see, you're not really seeing the real thing, but yet you're just seeing the figure of it.
Right. Well, you see how they advertise clothing and blue jeans today. The tighter.
Why do you think they do that? Why do you think you're driving down the road?
Because it's an enticing sign. It gets people to look at it. It grabs your attention.
That's right. It's an appeal for sex.
Right.
That's
the
what
major.
it's about.
That's what advertising is all about, to get the attention of those that want to, that they're trying to sell to.
That's right.
And the tight clothes, the low-cut shirts, and all these things is what really causes and stems from all these sexual sins that's condemned in the Bible.
I want to look at a passage in Genesis chapter 3, verse number 7. Now, we know that Adam and Eve, they were commanded to not eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We know that after they did that, their eyes were opened. And in verse number 7, it says, then both of them, both their eyes were opened, and they knew that they were naked. All right, so here's what happens. All right, Adam and Eve, their eyes are open, they see that they're naked. Now watch what happens. So they go and they sew fig leaves together and made themselves coverings. Now, I'm only left up to, imagine, exactly what all they made, but I am, thinking that they probably made them clothing that covered the primary parts of both of them. All right, so that's what they did. They went and they made themselves some clothes. All right, now verse number 7. They made them some coverings. Verse number 8, and then they heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day. Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the garden in the tree of the trees in the garden. And then the Lord called to Adam and said, where are you? And so he said, I heard your voice in the garden. I was afraid because I was naked.
Now, he had already covered himself.
That's right. Now, so what we see here is we see an example of they saw they were naked. They made clothes. After they made their clothes, they went and hid. When they hid, Adam says, I was naked. And so I hid myself.
Right. So that sort of gives us some type of clue that the things in which they were wearing themselves, they thought, hey, I'm still naked.
That's right. So we can use it. We can use this principle that according to the Bible, they had clothes on, and yet they were still considered naked. And we could properly conclude that when a person goes down to the beach and they wear a swimsuit, that
or a topless male,
they are equally as naked. They have gone to.
They've made coverings.
That's right.
They've made coverings.
That's right.
For themselves.
That's right.
But they're still naked, and they realize that they're still naked,
That's right.
just like Adam did.
That's right.
And just like God acknowledged that they were still naked.
Right. I think it's a very important case right here to go ahead and mention this. We're not only talking, friends, about females.
Absolutely.
We are talking about males as well, because males and females we're both human. We both have desires.
That's right.
And so that means that God's law is consistent for both.
And did not Adam say the reason they hid themselves was because we were naked? They were naked, both of them. Not just Eve, but him too, because evidently he didn't have enough covering on.
Right.
Exactly.
He had some covering, but it wasn't enough.
God had to, what had to happen later on is in Genesis 3:22. Let's see. In verse 21, it says, and also for Adam and his wife, the Lord God made tunics of skin and clothed them.
They weren't clothed prior to that.
That's right. See, they wasn't properly clothed. And so why in the world can't see that? I mean, and why people just don't think about things. I mean, I don't understand why it is the case that the closer you get to water, the less clothes you got to wear. I mean, I don't understand why that people can't understand that whenever they are dressed in a fashion like they would go to the pool, they wouldn't go like that any other place.
No.
They would not be going down on the street corners of the city wearing only their undergarments.
That's right. That's right.
And
that's right.
And then just talk about this. Even in the own department stores and all that, they had that little sign right there on the back, on the outside door, saying shoes and shirt required. They understand what is right and what is wrong.
That's right.
Well, most any place that you go into, any place of business, they understand that you have to have your shirt and your shoes on.
That's right.
They're not going to let a male come in without his shirt on.
That's right.
And so if this is worldly views, this is stores that have regulations. You know, if it's wrong for them, don't you think it would be wrong with God too? I know we don't base God's standards is not based upon worldly standards, but when the world sees something wrong, you know there's something about that.
Well, this whole story right here with Adam and Eve in the garden, that itself shows that it is made innate in man that we can know what is wrong and what is right, what is modest and what's not.
Yes.
That's right. Adam understood Adam understood
and
he was
Eve
naked. That's right.
understood they were naked.
That's right.
Right. And people going around today, men especially, I'm going to talk about men, going around and they're out there and they're mowing their grass and they're doing these things and they ain't got a shirt on.
I don't want to see that.
I don't want to see it either.
I don't want to see it either. I mean,
there's a lot of people that I've seen I really don't want to see.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting.
Does it not, after you've become a Christian, after you understand God's morality and modesty, law of modesty, and you see something like that, does that not distract you and actually, you know, it sickens you to a point?
It does.
I mean, you wouldn't say, okay, let's go out here and say, okay, the male's out there on his lawnmower with his shirt off, mowing his yard. You would never, ever see a woman out there topless.
Right.
What's the difference?
Well,
Is there a
propose
difference?
no.
No, it's not. Not according to God.
Right.
Right.
Well, a situation came up with my family. They have a pool, and I just explained to my family that I have two daughters. I have an 8-year-old daughter, Chloe, and I have a 12-year-old daughter, Kaylee. And I asked my family, I said, would it be okay if I allowed my children to go into any department store or any store in their bra and panties? I mean, that's a little extreme, but I'll tell you one thing. The undergarments that are sold today cover more, a lot of times, than these skimpy bathing suits that's being sold, and people buy those by masses.
And you know, you wouldn't. Would you allow your wife, allow your children, would you allow them to go dressed in their lingerie? You know,
No.
that's absurd, and we think that's absurd, but yet that's all right. I mean,
if you're around water,
it's all right if you're around water. The only thing it does change the name of it. It's now a swimming suit. You know, it's not. You just change the name of it. And you know, some people say, well, you know, modesty is based on time, and modesty is based on the culture that you're in. And what's modest for one person is not modest for another person. You go to one country and it might be modest. You come to the USA and it might be different.
Right.
You know, but we know that that's not the case. God has a standard. God has a moral standard.
And that's what we're looking at. We're not looking at cultural
It's not a matter of
modesty
culture,
because it's not the case. But culture in other countries, they may be covered. Modesty may be covered from their head to their toes. And in this country, modesty is if it hangs on you, it's
not,
okay.
I guess we should say this: it's not entirely left up to cultural.
Right.
You know, for the culture to decide. It's not entirely left up to that. But you know, like for example, if just look at how we have evolved in this country.
Yes.
You know, people will say, well, this is modest today. But if you went back in 1930, it would be just detestable.
Right.
You know, so you can't go by just the age that you're in, because the rate we're going, there's going to come a time when you just won't be wearing nothing.
Right.
I mean,
Exactly.
you'll just be
more
going
and
around.
more is
That's
coming
right.
off.
That's right.
And it's difficult too if you have children, especially girls like I have, to go out and try to buy something for them to wear, because everything that's out there is just, you know, I can't do it. I can't buy clothes. I can't hardly find clothes for my children that's modest.
If God looked at Adam and Eve in the garden and saw that they were naked and still have clothes on, same thing applies for us today. All right, now let's look at another Bible example. In Exodus chapter 28, verses 40 and 42, we have what was commanded for the Levites, what was commanded for the priests to wear. Notice what he says. Exodus 28, 40 through 42. For Aaron's sons you shall make tunics, And you shall make sashes for them, and shall make hats for them, for glory and beauty. So you shall put them on Aaron, your brother, and on the sons on him, and you shall anoint them. Consecrate them and sanctify them, as they may minister to the priests, and you shall make for them linen trousers to cover, watch this, to cover their nakedness. They shall reach from the waist to the thighs. Now that's I want y'all to notice this. God said that He wanted them to cover their nakedness. Now notice what in the world did He call their nakedness? What was in the mind of God? And we know God doesn't change.
Right.
You know, God has never changed. And what He viewed as immoral, then God has never changed His mind about adultery. He's never changed His mind about fornication. He's never changed His mind about lasciviousness. He's never changed His mind about those things. What God thought was wrong in the book of Genesis, He thinks is wrong today.
Absolutely.
In regards to morality. All right, now same thing applies to nakedness. You've got Adam and Eve, they were naked, and God saw that they were naked. God understood they were naked. He made clothes for them. All right, we got the same thing applies to the Levites here. God saw that they're naked. He wanted to cover their nakedness. And what did He call their nakedness? Well, He calls nakedness, watch it now, He says, ye shall make linen for them, linen trousers, to cover their nakedness. It shall reach from the waist to the thighs.
Right.
Now, it was a cultural thing under the Old Testament time period that it was a very shameful, very sinful thing to even show any part of the thigh.
Right.
And so if God called the thigh, if He called the thigh naked in the Old Testament, what makes it any different today? What has changed
There's
today?
no difference.
There isn't any difference.
Right.
What gives anybody listening to us today, what gives them the right to come along and to say, well, just because we live in the year 2011, 12, 13, whatever, whatever year, just because we live in this year and times have changed and we've modernized and we've got, we've gotten to this point, you don't have that right.
Right.
You don't have that ability because God's standard on morality has never changed. And He said that nakedness was to expose the thigh.
Right.
And so I have to have my thigh covered. And that means ladies, and men, that means you're going to have to cover your thighs. And in order to be acceptable to the Lord, you're going to have to cover your thighs.
Right.
And I know there's
Not wearing the short skirts, not wearing the short shorts.
And there's probably going to be some sweet sister somewhere that's going to be listening to this, and she's going to be saying, well, now you just need to buy clothes for my daughter. You go into JCPenney's and you try to find clothes for my daughter. Well, I tell you what, if you want to please God,
You'll go the extra mile.
You'll have to do what you have to. If you have to go buy a sackcloth and put on it.
Well, it's like I told Wes the other day, I couldn't find anything for my daughters, so we're going to start cutting off blue jeans.
Yeah.
And that's where if they want some shorts, it's going to be, they're going to cover the thigh, and we'll cut off
If
blue
that's what
jeans.
you have to do to please
what I
God,
have to
then
do.
you're just going to have to do it.
Well, just think about this. I think a very important thing that needs to be made here is that can your conscience be seared so much to the extent that you are no longer ashamed for committing sin?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
In Jeremiah's day,
in Jeremiah 6,
Right.
verse number 15, notice what he says here. It says, were they ashamed when they had committed abomination, that which makes God sick? It says, no, they were not at all ashamed, nor did they know how to blush. Interesting. Now, not only says that right here in this passage, but also in chapter 8 and verse 12, it says the same exact thing. Their mindset had been seared so much to the extent in which they could not even be shameful to themselves, even whenever they committed an abomination, that which made God sick.
Right. And there's people today that's walking around scantily dressed, is what we would say, scantily clad, that is walking around today that is abomination or sickening to the Lord. And we're not saying this now based upon what I feel or what I think, and that's what we're trying to prove. This is a Bible study to go back to the Bible to see what God says for us to do. This is not my personal opinion, your personal opinion, or Eric, your personal opinion.
Now, there's also a principle that he explicitly talks about the women here in 1 Timothy 2, verses 9 and 10, and also Titus 2, verse 4 and 5, where he's talking about them that they wear modest apparel. Now, in that whole context, it's talking about not wearing gold earrings, not doing things to make yourself
draw attention to yourself.
That's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So, okay, if that be the case, that they were not to overly dress themselves in order to draw attention to themselves. Now let's go to the other opposite extreme.
Yeah, underdress.
Underdress to bring
draw
attention to yourself.
That's
Why
right.
do you think so many times these women are out here showing off everything that they've got? Why are they
draw
doing that?
attention to themselves.
To draw attention to themselves. Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? I've got something, and I'm going to show it.
Right.
That's what their mindset is.
Right. In reality, men and women, we play with men and women out there that's doing this. When you put something on, and if you have any inkling of religiousness about you, when you're putting something on, think about that.
How that's going to be
How that's going to be portrayed. Why are you wearing what you're wearing?
And how
when you
other
go to
people-
your closet and you look in your closet and you see something, make the decision then. Is this going to be offensive to somebody, or am I going to cause somebody to lust after me?
Yeah.
And men, the same thing.
And
when
people
you go
have-
in there and you put on something that you're trying to, why are you wearing what you're wearing? That's what we need to ask.
I mean,
That's
men
the
can do
question
the
we
same
need.
exact thing.
Right.
Absolutely.
If they work out a whole lot and everything, a lot of times they want to show off their body.
Right.
Right.
And why? Why do they want to show off their
Because they're
body?
proud about what they've got.
Well, they want to, they
Bring
want to
attention
appeal. Yeah,
to
they want to bring
their-
attention to
Exactly.
themselves.
Exactly.
And you know what frustrates me sometimes is that, women and men alike, they'll say things like, well, if people are looking at me in a lustful manner, well, that's on them. Well, the fact of the matter is that you have allowed yourself, you set yourself up to become a stumbling block for somebody
Exactly.
else.
Right.
You
Exactly.
haven't taken in consideration at all what other people may think or say. And listen, let's just be honest with ourselves. That's all we're asking people to do. Be honest with yourself. You know as a male that you are attracted to female, you're attracted to the female body. That's just the way we are, it's the way God made us. We understand that. And when certain attributes are either exposed or either exonified or whenever that happens, it becomes hard upon us. It becomes difficult, and so we have to have the proper attitude and proper motivation, when we're wearing the things that we wear, and
These are principles that's given throughout the whole
That's right.
Bible.
That's right.
That we're not to cause another person to stumble because we can offend somebody's conscience. We can do a lot of things. There's a lot of things that we can take on and we can keep from. There's a lot of these things that are causing these things to go on in our nation. I think about a couple of principles. I think about David, and Bathsheba. David was supposed to not be. He was supposed to have went out to war that morning, but he didn't. That's a different situation, a lesson for a different time. But when he looked down upon Bathsheba, and he looked upon her, and he lusted after her, and those things that he felt, and then so those transgressions that took place, one led to another, the other led to another, and that's the way it is. It's progressive. And so when people are walking around out here and they see people that don't have any, that in God's view of things are naked, they are promoting and provoking this very same attitude.
Well,
we talk about David's sin a lot, but what about Bathsheba's sin too?
right. That's right. That's right.
That she put herself in a place of sin also by doing what she was doing.
Well, just think about this. We're talking about how it can provoke another person to sin and to be a stumbling block. There are 10 specific sins that can be basically bring forth and being provoked by just simply immodesty.
Right.
You've got adultery.
How does that start?
How does that start?
How does that start?
It starts
with
by the
lust.
eye.
Yeah, the
Let's
lust of the
talk
eye.
about the lust, exactly. What about fornication? Where does that come from?
Again,
All these is when we're drawn away by our own lust
That's right.
and enticed. Now, what entices most men when it comes to these sexual sins? What entices them?
Right.
It's the clothing. It's the appeal of, well, I say clothing, lack thereof, and so sometimes that's the case.
Jesus said that whosoever looks upon another woman and lust after her has committed adultery already in their heart. When we see something that like something as serious as adultery, and when Jesus says that even if you were to look upon another woman, we ought to take that in consideration when we go to the places that we go.
Right.
When you put yourself in a position to go down to the beach, you are setting yourself up to fall flat on your face and sin before God.
Right.
You're setting yourself up to commit adultery in your heart.
Right.
You're setting your family up to do the same thing. You're setting them up to be a stumbling block for other people. I got a passage that I'd like to read. It's in Romans 13, beginning in verse number 12. It says, "The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Therefore let us cast off the works of darkness, and let us put on the armor of light. Let us walk properly as in the day, not in revelry, drunkenness, lewdness, lust, not in strife and envy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ," and watch this, "make no provisions for the flesh to fulfill its lust." When people dress the way they do, when they go the places they go and put themselves in the situations they put themselves in, what they are doing is making provisions for the flesh. That's what we need to ask ourselves. We need to ask, am I making provisions for the flesh? Not just the lack of clothing, but it may be that you may be wearing pants. We just think about this. We hear that song, those tight-fitting jeans. Why in the world did he say that? Because he understood the sexual appeal involved in tight-fitting jeans. So he understood that.
Right.
You know, it's not necessarily the lack of clothing; it's tight-fitting clothing.
Right. That's what we addressed earlier.
That's what we addressed earlier.
You could be fully clothed and still
be immodest.
Be immodest. That's what we've got to press to the minds of these people.
There was a group of young people that talked about some of the things that they had problems with, and among them was tight-fitting jeans. Guys had problems with tight-fitting jeans, with low-cut jeans. Not only just short shorts and halter tops and things of that nature, but it was other things as well.
Exactly. Just think about all the sins that are provoked by immodesty. You've got adultery, fornication, being a whoremonger, inordinate affection, homosexuality, lewdness, nakedness, divorce, evil concupiscence, and also uncleanliness.
Yes.
Now, one thing, friends, that we have got to make sure you understand is that certain situations does not make immodest modest.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether it be sports, weddings, if you're around water, or whether it might even be a hot day. Never does a situation ever make immodest modest. But friends, it has come to a close again for this program, and we do want to say that if you want to study up on this subject a little bit more, my sermon called Immodesty Raging is on our website, shieldoffaithtv.com. Go to sermons and you will find that. And we do want to ask that you please visit that website. We want to know what you think about this program. Please give us some comments. Also give us your questions. And we also want to offer you a free Bible correspondence course that you'll find on our website. But until then, just think about it, and may God bless.